everyone, Ariel Adams here with Superlative Podcast. Please listen to aBlogtoWatch's other podcast, aBlogtoWatch Weekly, where we talk about the latest watch news and reviews. Today on Superlative, my guest is Jabs Totonji. He is a watch collector and someone who is helping brands in interesting ways in the United States through his own Piece Uniques, as well as an interesting venue series of events he does at a location near where you live in the DC area. Jabs, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. Honored to be here.
So I think the reason that I wanted to have you on the show was because you represent a perspective that is not only very important, which is the enthusiast, the watch buyer in the American luxury watch industry, but also I think your perspective is not perfectly well understood by many people, especially in Europe. I wanted to talk to you about what it's like to interact with these brands, some of the areas of excitement, some of the strange things. I guess the first question is, how many years would you say you've been actively buying watches as an enthusiast, as a collector?
So I've been collecting for about 10 years now. Bought my first watch, Rolex GMT Master 2. My wife kind of forced me to buy that one. It was all black, available on display.
Forced you?
Forced me. She was like, you got to buy, you're a grown-up now, you got to buy one grown-up watch. And so that was my first grown-up watch. And so, yes, I think she regrets it every day since.
Well, you know, in the United States, I think more so than other places in the world I've seen, I'm not saying it's not elsewhere, but the United States, there's this sort of weird rite of passage as you grow up, especially as a man. I can't say for women, maybe it's a little bit different, but as a man, you pick your adult social hobby, right? You're like, I'm an adult now, and I know that I'm not going to like meet friends through school and work, maybe a little bit through work, and my family is my family, but I need like a social vector. And I think the traditional one that a lot of men have chosen is like, sports, not necessarily playing sports, but like watching sports as a spectator. Cars are another one. Golf is one of them. Maybe certain types of physical activities, depending on guys, cycling or hiking or something like that. Watches and even though watches as a hobby is not per se new, or especially the item, but watches as a social hobby is distinctly of the last 30 years or so, right? People have been hanging out to talk about skiing far longer than they've been hanging out to talk about watches.
That's true. Yeah, it was not a social hobby, especially when I first got started. I feel like here in DC, everyone's very private. There weren't any clubs I could go to and talk to people. I was looking for something. So we kind of created our own. I met people at the watch store. And through that, we've created our own network and our own groups. And I think you've seen groups like that pop up throughout the United States. We have like Giancarlo doing the Atlanta Watch Society. You have the MIA Watch Club in Miami. And there's all these like groups that have formed just because people want to get together and talk about watches.
Now, when I started aBlogtoWatch, I was in a similar position. I was enthusiastic about a hobby that was weird and big and confusing. And again, this was at a very different time. This was in the very early 2000s when I was really getting into this. And the landscape was far different. We're talking 25 years ago now. But there was a lot of similarities. And one was the idea that this would be a funner thing if I could talk to people about it. And so what I did is I started a website, right? For a lack of having friends. Now, 20 years later, you don't need to start at aBlogtoWatch.com to have a conversation with other people about watches. And as you said, not just around the United States, but around the world, you can find a social community of folks, even if they don't live nearby you, that represent your mentality and allow you to talk about watches. Would you agree with that statement? Would you disagree? What would you add to that?
Yeah, 100%. It's funny because I run into so many people now, which it wasn't the case 10 years ago. But today, I run into people almost daily that are like, oh, what watch do you have on? Oh, I collect watches. Oh, I like watches. And then I'll add people to the group, maybe 3-4 people to the group every week, because they just approached me and they start talking about watches, and I can see that they're enthusiastic. And I'm like, why don't you come out and talk about them? And everyone's super excited. Like, oh, really? There's like a place where we can talk about watches. And not only talk about watches, but like see watches. A lot of the pieces that people want to get, you have to buy them sight unseen. They're hard to get, so you don't ever get to try it on. And sometimes you try on a watch and you don't love it, right? And so it's nice to come to these meetups where you can try these things on and see how it fits your wrist, and if it's too big or too small, and or how you might not even like it, you might like it, and it might make you want to watch more. So it's cool to have that experience with people that are like-minded.
I think it's really important to discuss the reason that these groups exist. It's very practical. It's not confusing, but I think this is important because people in Switzerland often misunderstand all this for whatever reason. And I think it begins with that simple idea, and you stated it, that people see these things online, but ultimately need some type of real world experience with it.
Yeah,
I think it's really crucial. And I say to people all the time, I repeat this like a mantra, but we exist in an internet first era in the watch industry. Mm-hmm. That means you learn about something first online, but that doesn't mean your entire experience with that brand or that product or that model series is going to be in the internet. You need to see it in the real world in some way. You need to see it on other people. You need to examine it for yourself. Maybe you need to hang out with people that represent the brand and see if that's a company you want to, give your money to. But this entire social, let's hang out and talk about watches, in my opinion, derives from the simple fact that these consumers need additional information and validation before ever spending money on an object. And of course, it makes sense and it's funner to do it together. But would you agree that that's the core need which is being addressed?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you think about it, we've become so jaded. We're buying $5,000, $10,000, $50,000 watches, $100,000 watches, sometimes without even seeing them. And you wouldn't buy a car without test driving. We're going to the dealership several times, especially if you're buying it at that price point. And we do that with watches all the time. I bought watches online and I haven't seen them or haven't felt them or tried them on. And so it's funny because you have people that are like, oh, I don't know, should I get a 42 millimeter or 40 millimeter on, for example? And you come to the meetups and they're both there. And you get to try both of them on. And you get to see what fits your wrist better because some people prefer 42, some people prefer 40. It's really, really important to do that and see that. Most people haven't seen a Jordan in person in real life outside of the watch world, And I think having that experience where you get to try it on, it's changed my perspective and my wants in the wish list of watches that I want because I got to try something on and wear it.
Well, it's almost silly to discuss the alternative. The idea that you need to defend why you would need to touch and feel something that not only you're supposed to wear, but that costs a lot of money. I mean, that's kind of absurd. It's like saying, I kind of need to try those shoes on before I buy them. Why, sir? Why would you need to see how your feet feel? Aren't they beautiful shoes? Well, they come in different sizes. I just want to make sure. Sir, you should be able to. You can measure your feet, can't you? But it's silly that there's this expectation out there. And again, certain people have it, that people will buy it sight unseen. I remember when I first started this, a lot of brands didn't even have their own websites. At the time, it was shocking to them that people might be buying things on the internet. Just 10, 15 years later, those same people have been totally replaced by new people that are shocked that anyone might actually want to see it first before buying it.
Yeah, absolutely.
What an insane reversal, right?
Yeah. But I've noticed that brands are starting now to go back to the brick and mortar and have that experience. You see like Christopher Ward just opened up 3 showrooms this past year in the US. One of them in one of my buildings. So I'm proud to be a partner with them. But they're going back to that brick and mortar, inviting people to the store. You see it in the luxury space. Here locally in DC, we've had IWC open up in the past 2 years. Panerai open up a store. Breitling open up a store. These are retailers that had small booths inside of an AD. And now they have their own boutiques.
So I want to get to that in a moment, but I want to talk a little bit more about the history and explain sort of where we got to this point. Because I think for people just getting in the industry, they can take for granted. They're like, oh, there's these watch collector groups. I need to interact with them somehow. I remember when these groups initially formed, and I've seen the entire trajectory. And I study this behavior. I study consumer behavior, especially watch consumer behavior. There's nothing more fascinating to me than understanding the interesting psychology of these watch groups. And there's a lot of things I've recognized. For example, they can't get too big because then they sort of break down politically. Every leader has what I'll call other people competing for authority. There's never stable alphas, and if they are, it's very, very rare, and then they end up hiding away. So you can't have mega organizations. And at the end of the day, the social fun element is far more important than the business element, right? The second these things aren't fun and convenient for people, it goes away. If they start charging fees, start to get organized, start to get weird about membership, all of that can very easily break down the entire process or what people like. So these are inherently fragile organizations, but they all serve kind of the same need, and that is the watch hobby's cool, but the watch hobby is cooler with a friend.
Absolutely. I agree with everything you said. And what's nice about the community here locally in DC, like our club is called the Jabs Club. I didn't name it. It wasn't me who put that name, but the group put the name. And it's not, there's no authority. I'm not in charge of it. It's a WhatsApp group. People ask me, can I post this or that? I'm like, look, it's a community for the community, by the community. There's no rules other than treat other people's watches how you treat yourself, your own. And it's important to keep it, fun. I think it's the easiest way to put it. A lot of people get serious about the rules, and you got to like these posts, and you got to repost, and if you don't, you're not invited to the next event. And if you don't, we just try to keep it simple. There's no Facebook page or Instagram page. It's a WhatsApp chat that everyone can reach out to whoever they want, invite whomever they want. We look for like-minded people. No one's there to show off. People are there just for the passion. And I think it's important to keep it that way. But in addition to that, we collaborate with all the other groups here in the DC area as well. There's the Washingtonians and the DMV Watch Club and Official CP Time. And we, Official CP Time, I've been to every single one of their events. They've been to every single one of mine. I call myself a board member on theirs because they're a little more organized. Rightfully so. I think they need it too because they're all over the country. But I've hosted their first events at my building, for example. And we all support each other in that way. And it's a beautiful thing. Like Al, who is the founder of Official CP Time, bought one of my Jabs Art Edition watches. And we just all support each other. And I love that. And it's helped build a really, really beautiful community here locally.
Now let's talk about what's in it for the brands. Obviously, it's a deep conversation, but I think it's important to say that brands have always known that people need to see their products and interact with them. And a while ago, the way to do that was at shows like Basel World and Watches and Waters and things like that. They would sort of sit there at their booth in Switzerland, and the collectors would come to them. There would be these almost like a mecca where it's like every year I know all these people are going to come and check out my goods, and they could just sit there and the then version of you and your groups might show up. And I'd say the watch collector groups really started in the 1990s with some people here in California as well as in Singapore. That is sort of how it all started. And it's been an evolution since the mid 1990s, starting with sort of online forums and things like that. So I'm so well acquainted with these things. But funny, I never become a member. That's very important for me. But let's go back to the watch brands. The brands know that people need to see the watches. And it used to be that people came to the brands. And then as brands started to have international retailers, they expect the retailers to invite people into their stores or interact with local groups and things like that and drive traffic and awareness to the brands. But then retailers stopped kind of being able to do that. And then when social media came around, these types of groups became even more democratized and were able to sort of self-organize and find one another. Even if they didn't physically know one another, you can use social media and be like, whoa, that guy likes watches and he lives nearby to me. Oh, and so does that guy. Maybe we could go through this journey together. So it was a very quick and organic process to go from brands expecting people to go to them to brands saying, oh, this is a group of people. It seems like it's similar to a store. I can have one relationship and potentially reach, dozens of people. So for the brand, it makes sense because participating in these events, throwing events, inviting people to events, attending events, whatever, gives them an opportunity to show their watches to people that might not ever see it in a store. And then the people who like watches, you and the other club members, get the opportunity of seeing watches. So there's, at least for a while, a healthy symbiotic relationship where both are getting their needs met. Consumers want to be around watches and see them, and brands want to expose their products to brands. So you would agree that on a very basic level, there's at least a meeting of incentives.
Absolutely. Watch collectors want to see the watches in person. We had David Kendo out here, for example, recently. And when in life are you ever going to see a David Kendo out in person, or even at a watch store? Like, I think he's made 50 watches ever. And so
a few more than that, but yeah.
Okay, there you go. But it's awesome that he came out, brought 4 watches with him, got to meet the guy, the watchmaker himself.
David's really nice.
He's awesome. And we had dinner, and it was such a cool experience. Everyone got to meet him and the person behind the brand. And that's a lot of the times why you're buying into a brand, is because of the people. And so if you don't have that experience and that one-on-one, I could go to a watch fair with 10,000 other people and meet him for 5 minutes, and that's great. But having dinner, having it be an intimate setting, getting to connect with him personally, I think is much different than any other experience you're going to have at a show or at a retailer.
And I want to go back to this idea of people being able to see the watches, as well as sort of this real estate investment that you're talking about. Brands now really and truly finally get, and if they haven't yet, they'll figure it out in the next couple of months, hopefully, that in the internet first era, an internet only relationship is not enough.
Absolutely.
If you don't have a plan of regularly exposing consumers to your products, to your personnel, to your brand philosophy, chances are that even though you might have a great watch, you're going to be subsumed by a louder volume of others. You're going to be a quiet voice amongst louder people, and you simply won't get enough attention to be considered by consumers. So there's this very real need to get in front of people in a way that's challenging. Most of these brands, if they don't have a store, and even if they do have a store, it's just very difficult to get people's attention. So we know that in the crowded, frenetic environment of social media messaging and things like that, the idea of getting people's attention for an hour even is something that you could never, ever hope to get online, right? Like you could never, like to spend an hour with Christopher Ward online is far more difficult than to get them to spend an hour with them in person.
Absolutely. I don't know if you've seen, for example, AP's new 150th year anniversary website.
I mean, I've seen the structure. I've seen the books. I'm sure there's a website. They print it. It's like the Audemars Piguet. It's a small world Disneyland.
Yeah, it's like it's online small world Disneyland, where you can go in and play with it, and it is incredible. They spent millions doing it, I'm sure, and it's really cool. Everyone should check it out, especially.
It'd be great if they actually use that money to make new watches, though.
Yeah, exactly. But that being said, I've probably spent 20 minutes on there. As cool as it was, and it's really, really interesting and really cool. I spent 20 minutes while I was on another meeting, flipping through the not full attention. And it's awesome. I love that. I think was one of the coolest online presences I've seen. But you're right. I can go to Christopher Ward and spend 3 hours now. We do. I mean, I go there and I spend 3 hours and I'm like, I'm sorry, I took so much of your time. I should get going.
So this idea that these groups provide an important marketing outlet for brands is very, very real. One of the things that I study is sustainability, right? I want to make sure that business practices can last for a long time. And I'm not saying we're ever going to figure it out in this conversation, but I want to mention that there's a lot of sustainability issues in these groups. And that goes from the group itself to the attention of the members to their interest in what a brand is offering. Because most brands don't do this to save money. The idea that I'm going to hang out with a casual enthusiast group, doesn't matter how, ready to buy some of the members might be, this is not formal. We get to the formality with the stores, and we'll get to that later, but we're going to hang out with these folks. My point is that at some point, the deal starts to make less and less sense for at least one of the parties, the brand or the group itself, either because there's a lack of monetary investment on either end, or it just sort of gets boring. I want you to talk a little bit about some of the things that happen, meaning reasons why this starts to work out less for brands, reasons why people like you and yourself get bored. Like, talk about some of the natural things that happen, because I think brands look at this, are like, oh, this is a great sustainable business model. I don't know that it is. I'm not saying it's not important to do and have a strategy, but talk about some of the real things that happen months, if not maybe even years into this for both the collector and the brand. I think it's really important.
Absolutely. Look, I don't think this is the only way a brand should go about building a collector base and showing off their watches. That being said, I think it is important, but I don't think it's the only method that a brand should take. For sustainability, one of these groups could close tomorrow, right? But I think naturally another group will just form in its place. And while I may have been tapped out, let's say, for example, I take a brand, an independent, and I buy one or two of their pieces, and I'm tapped out. I'm not going to be buying more of their pieces. I'm tapped out. There's another buyer out there in the area, or a new collector that's 5 years where I was in the past, 5 years ago, that's looking for that. And new groups may form and may pop up, and old ones might be closed. And I don't think it's meant to be sustainable. It's not meant to be, it's an enthusiast-driven group. It's not meant to be a business, right? And
I mentioned this because brands, again, they're always looking for cheaper and cheaper ways of doing things. And this began by them doing their own events.
Yeah.
And then it led to doing events with a retailer. And then it led to, let's just go to a bar or a restaurant and sit around a table and maybe we won't even pay for the food, right? Like it became lower and lower and lower investments. And I understand these brands want to maximize profit and they see marketing as an expense as opposed to something that is an asset that they build onto the brand, which is foolish. But in their idea, they can get away with murder. We can have super casual events and sell $100,000 watches or less or more, and that'll be a sustainable business model. And my answer is no, it's not. You might get lucky every once in a while or might have a group for a few months which is interested in you. But as you said, groups can disband. People can shift their attention. It can be very fatiguing to help organize or run one of these groups. People start doing it for free because it's fun. And then they realize like, oh my God, this is an unpaid job. And then they try to get paid and then it all breaks down.
Yep.
So I think it's very important to discuss all this because as you said, while this is great, if a brand puts all of their eggs in this basket, it's going to be dangerous for them. Now you mentioned Christopher Ward, which I think is interesting. And I have a whole diverse set of opinions about it. But Christopher Ward said, we're so invested in this idea of interacting with the community, we can no longer rely on just events the community creates. We now have to have our own spaces so that we can have more control, maybe more frequency of our events. Because this is so important for us, we now have to institutionalize it rather than just allow it to be organic and hang out at these events as they may pop up. Would you agree?
Yeah, so Christopher Ward is one of the outliers there. And I think what they're doing is incredible because they've gone to the communities and had this experience. And I was like, whoa, this is a great experience. And then they've created their own network and their own community. And there are people that I'm getting introduced to here in DC because of Christopher Ward now, right? Because they have a brand and a name and a watch that they sell. And so every single time I'm at the showroom here in Virginia, I meet collectors that I had never even known existed in the area. So they're bringing the collectors together as well. So they've taken it, what we've done as a little community group of 100 people, and they've expanded it to a community group of 10,000 people. And now they're introducing the community groups to each other, which is awesome. And I can see myself going from one community group to the next. So like when I'm in New York next, I'm definitely stopping by the Christopher Ward Soho showroom. And I'm sure I'm going to meet a bunch of collectors from another community group that they built. And a lot of brands have done this now. Like Journe has the Journe Society. You have Romain Gauthier has a horological club as well. And B&F has the Tribe. So you can kind of see David Thune has one as well. And so you see a bunch of these brands creating their own communities. And I think that is very, very impactful and very helpful for them to stay in touch with collectors that are buying their watches and those collectors become somewhat of ambassadors for the brand, right? Being in the tribe makes you an ambassador for MBNF. You want to be involved with the brand. You get insight to the brand before other people do. You get gifts that no one else gets. You get special watches. And all you have to do is register your watch. So, for example, you get the Mad 2 in orange that is only a tribe member watch that you can get.
Now, to be cynical about it, all these brands are essentially doing is creating and nurturing their own, email marketing lists, right? When they have your contact information, that's very valuable because they don't need to go to another entity like aBlogtoWatch to reach you. The problem, though, is that the brands' desire to do everything themselves often means they bite off more than they can chew. And I know that a lot of these brands have essentially email marketing lists that they like to position as a club or something like that. And some of them honestly do better than others. But wouldn't you agree that across the board, having your own club and trying to sustain it and making it meaningful is oftentimes far more than these brands should be doing given their size and where at least collectors we want them to focus their efforts on?
So I agree but disagree. I think there's going to be a space for aBlogtoWatch and the Hodinkis and Fratello and all of the other news media. It's always going to be there. Those are institutional. They're reporting on the watches. They get access to every single brand, not just one brand. The brands doing what they're doing, like if you're a tribe member at MBNF, you get access to the brand, to the CEO, to the watchmakers. You get insight on what's happening before other people, and it makes you feel special. Christmas comes around, you get a Moser sweater because you're part of the Moser tribe, and it keeps people connected. But that doesn't mean that MBNF is just a community-based business. I think it's just one aspect of their business, and collectors appreciate it. When everyone got those little minion toys, it was all over social media. People were posting their little minions. It was a very cool thing to get out of the blue. David Thune just did it with the backpacks, and it was awesome. I think Jorn is sending out, they sent out mittens last year, from the Jorn restaurant. And having access to the collectors allows them to have that one-on-one and continuous relationship. Because I might not get a Jorn allocation next year, but I did get this little, mitten, and it kept me interacted with the brand. So maybe 2027, I'll still want that Jorn, because it's hard to sell all of the watches that they're selling, especially if there's so many people that want them for such a limited amount of people. So like David Thune makes 400 watches. To get 400 watches out to people, and it's a small community anyways. So when they're building that small community and keeping track of those people, I think a lot of people really, really appreciate that.
No, I agree, and it's very effective. I mean, I come from a time where these brands struggled to sell the watches, to get people to know about it. In order to get on people's minds, what they're doing totally makes sense. And I agree that they're never really going to replace traditional media, but they're telling a story that even traditional media wasn't able to tell because they never had access to it and things like that. Yeah. It's interesting to me. But like I said, I still feel that for the most part, a lot of the brands aren't really thinking about what's expected. Some of them are able to invest in it and, like you said, really do things. But here's I think where my concern is. A lot of the brands assume that if they play this game, they'll get people to buy watches that are fundamentally more expensive than they want, given the alternative. And this is where I want your insight, right? There's these two worlds. There's these worlds of the brands that want you to dance around them to get the favor of buying something. And then there's this world of all these available discounted watches out there that are perfectly lovely, but don't necessarily come from brands that are doing that type of behavior. Talk about the consumer experience where they have these two options: brands that are romancing them but charging a lot, or brands that have no relationship with them but you can get their products for a lot cheaper. Why do you go down one of these routes or another? How do you make the decision between where to spend your money and why? Talk a little bit about this if you can.
Yeah, so I buy watches from both brands. So I'm probably the best person to ask on this.
No, it's good.
But I do buy from I just buy what I like, and I buy what I love. And I have from watches from Girard-Perregaux and Jacques Dutronc to Jorn and Pateks and APs. So Seikos and G-Shocks. I just bought a G-Shock yesterday. So, I mean, I buy a little bit of everything. I enjoy everything. But I think a lot of people enjoy the story, right? And they enjoy being part of a community and having access. You don't, buying something that's readily available may not be the most exciting thing for some people. A lot of people talk about, and you see this all the time in interviews and podcasts, it's the chase. DJ Khaled just came out with an interview and says, they call this one the I can't get it, so I got it, or I don't know, you know? But he's bragging about getting a watch that he couldn't get. And a lot of people aspire to get the things they can't get. And I think a lot of the community wants those watches because it makes them feel special, or it's awesome that you have that access. And it is, right? It's not like a bad thing to get something that other people can't potentially get.
Well, I think it's interesting you mentioned that, and that's been a very successful strategy for parts of the watch industry, as you said, to have somebody chase something and then give them some type of satisfaction at some point that, oh, you were hunting and now you captured what you're hunting. But to step back and be a bit of a cynic, and nothing I'm going to say is going to reduce people's desires for exclusive items, but that's a fundamentally different hobby than being into watches. That's about chasing high desire objects and then showing off that you have this thing that is difficult for other people to get. And it's a form of status symboling. It's a form of signaling certain types of virtues, but it's really not directly related to you love watches, I love watches, let's love watches together. It's more like I can have something you can't. Would you like to know other things about me and why I'm so successful as a hunter? Right?
I get
it's
that.
different than being into watches. Would you agree?
I agree. I think if you're just chasing hype, there's a difference between people who just chase hype and people who buy a little bit of everything or like what they want, or get what they want, sorry. If you're just a hype chaser and you're just chasing the hard to get watches, that's a whole different type of person. They're usually not watch collectors. If you look at the collectors and the enthusiasts and the people that come to these meetups, most of the people that come to these meetups are not chasing the Nautilus and the Aquanaut or the Daytona. They might have them in the collection, but that doesn't necessarily be the thing that they're looking for. And I'm not saying that they don't want one or they might not get one, but they're also looking at, oh, that's a really cool G-Shock. That's a really cool Furlan Mari. That's a really cool Le Sablier or a Romain Gaultier, or stuff that's trading much under retail, right? That's a very cool, I don't know, whatever it may be. There's collectors that really appreciate the watches themselves, and it doesn't take away from them buying hype, right? I have a bunch of hype watches. Some of the hype watches I bought were not hype when I bought them. The first Jordans I bought were selling under retail when I bought Jordans for the first time.
Those are the days.
People are like, how do you get Jordans? I'm like, because I bought them when they were $10,000 off.
Oh, people don't get for a long time. Not only was it easy to buy any Jordan, but nobody was spending retail on the Jordan, like not one.
Yeah. And so now it's become hype. And so you have a lot of people that want to get it now for a status symbol, for example. But that's not everyone. And I think a lot, like Jordan does a really good job of vetting out the clients. There's a wait list for every watch, but they meet with, you don't get a Jordan if you don't go into a boutique. You don't get a Jordan if you don't meet the salesperson directly. They've made it into they're looking for true enthusiasts. And I think it's a very honorable thing to do. You see some get flipped, but it's only human nature. But I think a lot of the Jordan collectors are very serious collectors.
Convince me or affirm me. And this is interesting. Again, I went down my Jordan rabbit hole. I used to meet with the brand, go to the facility, see what they do. Now that the brand is hyped, I've also noticed that they haven't released a lot of new watches in the last decade, right? And for me, it's kind of like over. Now, I'm not a buyer. I'm not going in there to buy and collect. But for me, my interest in the brand has rapidly diminished because of a lot of the things you said. Hyped, over retail, hard to get, people wafting around the brand that are really just interested in exclusivity and hard to get things, not really watchmaking. At the end of the day, a Jordan watch is very good. I will not disagree with that. They make wonderful things, and I love the man's technique. But again, like, tell me that I'm okay, or maybe have me reassess my judgment Whereas when a brand becomes like that, I go the other direction. I'm no longer as interested because there's less for me there, especially since they really haven't been innovating along the way. Like, am I right to be bored of it and kind of turned off, or am I missing something?
So with Jordan, I think the opposite. I think they have been innovating. I mean, they just came out with the Furtif this year, which is an incredible brand new, unlike anything else they've made. They had the FFC, the 2-minute chronograph retropont that they came out with, the Tokyo edition. But that being said, Jordan themselves will tell you that they are overhyped, and that it's cool that their watches are selling for astronomical prices. But they even think it's ridiculous. I think Pierre Halimi just did an interview where he's like, "This is crazy. You know, we want to get collectors' watches, and it's hard to do that when your watch is selling for double retail." You know, before I think the hype, a lot of people that were buying Jordans were true collectors, and now I still think they're true collectors. But I think there's a mix of bad actors in there that are buying them for the hype.
Would you not agree that the true collector at some point is very concerned about, I don't want to say value retention, but value, meaning they buy a new watch, they want their money to go to maximum wattage, right? Not necessarily other things. And so there's a tendency, the longer you collect, to question your purchases of, why am I buying this? Is this a good price? Am I going to want it? And that's my suspicion. That's what I've seen, is that people become a little bit more choosy. It's not that they spend less. In fact, sometimes they spend more, but they're more concerned about the value proposition of what they're getting. Is that true, or have you noticed that that's not as true as I might think?
100%. I mean, look, we all work really hard for our money. I'm not just working this hard so that I can just go buy something that also loses 50% of value tomorrow, right? I want to be smart with my money. I'm not a flipper. I don't sell my watches. I don't buy them to sell them. But I also like to know that I have value in this watch should I need to sell it, should I need the money in the future. I didn't just go buy something that lost half of its worth. And I think it's okay to say that. A lot of people are like, "Oh man, that's taboo to say," or something. No, I work really hard for my money. You know, I'm not going to go blow it, right? At the same time, I want to make sure that I'm buying something that I like. And if sometimes that means buying something that's not retail, buying it secondary because I can save half of retail. And I'm okay doing that. I buy from the retailers. Sometimes I want to buy something from retail, and I know going in I'm losing 20%, but I have to know that going in, and I have to be okay with that.
I think you make a very interesting point, but I want to sort of restate it because I think it's easy to miss what you said. You talked about value retention, which, yes, is very important in a lot of people's minds, but I also think it's part of the problem. And what I mean by that is I think that when people buy a watch not to lose value, they're effectively not buying the watch that they like, which is distinctive and unique for them. They're buying a popular watch because only popular watches tend to have, that much desirability. If it's not popular, then not enough people want it. So what you said, I think was interesting, is if you feel that a watch is going to depreciate, it's not that you won't buy it, but you will allow someone else to take the depreciation hit before you purchase it. So a pre-owned watch makes more sense to you if you don't think it's a hype watch, not because you don't want it, but because you feel that depreciation concerns you and you would like to avoid taking that hit yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at some points, you would be just plain stupid to go in and say, I mean, it depends, right? Some people like to buy a new car and they want to have a new car. And they know they're going to buy that Range Rover brand new and they're going to lose 50% of the value over 3 years. Same thing with a watch. Some people want to have a new watch. But I'm okay buying new watches that depreciate. I do it all the time. A lot of the times I say, you know what? I can save $50,000 here buying this pre-owned. I'm going to go that route too. There's no right or wrong answer to it. It's doing what you feel comfortable doing and just being educated about what you're doing, right? The thing that would upset me is if someone goes and buys a $10,000 watch and then 2 days later it's worth $2,000 because they weren't educated about that. If they went in and said, yeah, I'm buying this $10,000 watch and I know it's worth $2,000 tomorrow, but I'm okay with that, that's fine too, right?
When you hang out in the group with the fellow watch lovers, do you find that group behavior is lubricant for making purchases? Or do people actually discuss these purchases more and then have a second guess and think, I was going to buy it, but now my friend said to think twice, maybe I'll get something else. So does being with people help people buy more watches, or does it actually have them hold back because they're getting so many different perspectives. They're experiencing some choice paralysis.
Yeah, I tell everyone, don't join the group if you don't want to buy a lot of watches.
Okay, so it's a lubricant.
We have a problem, like we really have a problem, and we just push each other to have the same problem, and we it's not a good thing to get into. So I tell everyone, if you don't want to spend more money on watches, don't join the group. It's not for you.
And I think what you've just mentioned is the most important business element, right? There's the fun for the collectors and things like that, but the brands get to enjoy this accelerated consumerism, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
People are validating the hobby with one another. And when you're in a hobby, the natural tendency, and this is why I laugh all the time, I tell brands, you don't have to explicitly say that. When people like the hobby, they spend money on the hobby. Yeah. You don't have to tell them to spend money. They're already going to do that if they're happy. If they're not spending money, you reminding them, and hey guys, buy a watch, not going to change anything, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's really interesting that this is such an important profit driver. If you interact with these groups, maybe even a few around the world, and the chemistry is good, you will inspire them to buy your watches. And so that's why brands fly all over the place, including to the United States, multiple times a year from Switzerland, to meet with folks like you. I mean, here's the process. They use aBlogtoWatch to get messaging out there, right? People know about the brands. And then, because it's on your mind, they'll be like, hey, we're coming to a city like yours. They're going to DC. They go to Jabs or one of the other ones and be like, hey, do you want to do an event? And because you guys know about the brand, have been reading about it, you're like, oh, we'd love to see this stuff in person. So it's this interesting ecosystem of getting you aware of it to begin with. And then once you know about it, you want to go to the event. I would venture to guess, correct me if I'm wrong, that you're much more likely to attend an event of a brand you've been reading about online than one that you've really never heard of before.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had, I'll give you an example. We had David Thune come out, and we had FB Jorn come out, and we had maybe 120 people in the room. We had Thomas Prescher come to DC, who
good old Thomas.
Not a lot of people have heard of him. That makes incredible pieces,
but no one knows him.
And we had maybe 25 people in the room. It was
not many for Thomas. That's great.
It was a good turnout. But I'm saying the difference, and it's the same group. I just posted the message in a WhatsApp group and said, David Thune is coming, Jorn is coming. The list went crazy. I say Thomas Prescher's coming, and the people who have never heard of him are not potentially coming, to that. And so you're right. It's like your job, for example, is highlighting those people. If you just wrote about Thomas Prescher for the next year, every single day, next time he comes down to DC, I bet you I have 150 people in the room.
And honestly, Thomas is nothing but good things to say about him.
Incredible.
He's very intelligent. He's one of the smartest watchmakers I've met. He's so independent, it's almost to a fault.
Yeah, he's incredible. And what he does is amazing. And he has his own brand identity and language. And you can look at a Thomas Prescher from across the room and know that's a Thomas Prescher.
Yeah. But he's cool. He defines niche, right?
Yeah. There's the guys, I don't know if you've seen these posts, but super niche. They have like, this is niche, this is super niche. And
really the guys in New York. Yeah. Perry and all them.
Perry, yeah. And I told him, I love those posts because I always know the niche things for like the fragrances or the cigars. And then I never know the super niche things unless they're the watches. Yeah. And that's cool because I would never know these super niche jeans, so.
And I think it's important for brands to recognize that there's an ecosystem. It's not, we'll meet this group and make friends with them and our business needs are solved.
Absolutely.
It's so much more complicated than that. Now, I want to go back to Christopher Ward because I think there's sort of an interesting irony. Now, Christopher Ward is a much more complicated conversation, but as a brand, they're a lot more agile than a lot of others. They've been around for a long time. I love how people think that they're like a new startup brand. They're not at all. They're larger than most of the large brands in a lot of ways. They started as sort of this mail order style company where it was like, hey, you like this popular Swiss watch, buy direct from us with the kind of look at a much lower price, right? That was a business model. And that's how they started out as. And their entire thing was, we don't need to have brick and mortar. We don't need to have traditional retailers. We will have a catalog business, which turned into online. And if we have a good value proposition and a familiar look, we'll be able to sell to enough people. Now, today, they still don't have what you would think of as traditional wholesale retail, but they have some of their own stores here. They're testing out in the UK. You have this very interesting full circle rotation. Now, all of it is all internal. They're all vertically integrated. They have their own stores, their own catalog, their own buyers. That part of the mentality of let's own the process hasn't changed. But what really has changed is the relationship with the physical world. And they now realize, especially through Mike Pearson, that the online-only side is too hard and too competitive. If you don't make friends with people in real life and show them that you value them, honestly, the watches don't even really matter at this point, but that you value, that you feel good, that you're excited about your own watches, that goes really, really far. And now they're investing in these permanent spaces. Is it, again, am I the only one that thinks it's somewhat ironic that what they've ended up doing now is the exact opposite of what they wanted to do when they started?
Look, it's ironic, but I think all the brands have realized this, right? Every single brand. Jordan just doubled in size in their showroom in New York. They took over additional space in LA. You have MB&F opening up in, I think it was Miami. They opened up a spot. You come to our local mall here in DC, and you have the shops, even the jewelry shops. Van Cleef was in Neiman Marcus, and now Van Cleef has its own 8,000 square foot space. Chanel has went from like a 6,000 square foot space to a 30,000 square foot space. Cartier is doubling in size. All of the brands are doing it. IWC just opened up their own showroom. Panerai. And this is just locally. I'm talking about the DC area. And so when you see that, I think brands have realized it is very important to have people have that experience, come in. And what Christopher Ward's doing is really cool because it's appointment only. It's in an office building. It's not like on a retail space. Once they opened up in August, they were booked out until the end of December. I don't know where bookings are today, but within the first 2 weeks, they booked out 4 months. And it just tells you how much demand there is to see these things in person. And seeing a Christopher Ward online and then seeing it in person, you have a completely different perspective. And you'll leave wanting a different watch than what may have brought you in. So I'll give you an example. One of my favorite Christopher Ward's the Colchester. I don't know if you know what I'm speaking of, but it's the carbon fiber case, carbon fiber dial. It has this, you can kind of skeletonize, you can kind of see through the dial, push crown, and it has all of this for like $1,800. And it's one of the watches that no one ever talks about. It's never mentioned. It's not one of the hype pieces. It's one of my favorite watches that they make. And I didn't get to experience it until I saw it in person, right? I never looked at it online. I was never, oh my God, I have to have this. Once I saw it in person, I bought it then and there, And so it's really cool to see those things in person because they'll change your perspective on the brands. And then the people. I mean, like Mike Pearson made me fall in love with Christopher Ward. I own 5 Christopher Wards now in a span of a year. And it's all because and thanks to the relationship I built with him.
Now, you're a little bit different because in addition to being a collector and sort of a group organizer, because of your career in real estate, you've actually helped, at least Christopher Ward with a real estate space. And I know you, of course, can't divulge too much, but what is it like to work with them versus other types of potential clients? What are the concerns they have? What are they interested in? Talk a little bit about the psychology of a brand like Christopher Ward when it comes to investing in a space. What are they looking to get out of it? And what are some of the interesting things that they bring up in conversation?
So I'll tell you, I've done over 600,000 square feet of lease space throughout my career so far. Christopher Ward was probably one of the easiest leases I've done. They came in, they flew in, they saw the space, and we had a few comments on the lease back and forth, and the deal was done. They knew what they wanted, and it was very easy and efficient. I've done one more lease for Falk watches, and they're right next to the Christopher Ward space. So this office building now has 2 watch retailers, one secondary gray market dealer, led by Ethan Falk. He's awesome. I don't know if you've ever met, Next time you're out in DC, we'll make sure to take you to both spaces.
I'd like that.
And for like Ethan, for example, he needs to have a safe that's bolted to the ground, which is none of my other tenants need that, you know? So every tenant has their quirks and wants and needs. And as a landlord, and we don't refer to ourselves in the business as landlord, we refer to ourselves as partners to all of these brands, because their success ultimately is my success as a landlord. And so as a partner, I try to find out how can we find a solution to their problems. So that's ultimately my role in this real estate world on the watch side. So
they're pretty easy.
Really easy. Compared to a government contractor, you need skip space and top secret clearances to get in, and only U.S. citizens can come into the space.
Do you think part of it is that they're still very new? That a company that has a much longer culture with real estate and store spaces might have different things? Some of the brands that have been doing this for a long time, I know that are a lot pickier. But would you say there's sort of like a fresh-eyed element to it where they're just not really sure what to do, but they're very excited about it?
Yeah, you could say that. I think they have consultants that are helping and guiding them through the way. And I think with like Christopher Ward and Falk, for example, they're not professionals in the real estate world. And they said, hey, who's the professional and how can we get that person to help us? So they asked us as the landlord, and I say as landlord, but as their partner, to come in and say, hey, can you give us people who could build out the space for us? Who are the general contractors that you'd recommend? Versus a large corporation would come in and be like, this is my contractor. You're going to work with them. I don't care what your schedule is. You have to change it for their schedule. Christopher Ward's like, you help us find the contractor that you think would be a good fit for us.
Right.
And the contractor they used in Virginia is now the contractor that they used in New York. And so they're learning on the way too, right? And so I'm sure that they're going to be using that contractor moving forward because they had a great experience with that contractor. And so they'll over time become real estate professionals.
This is part of another trend which I find interesting that is actually somewhat new, and that is brands growing in this market with the help of enthusiasts and other types of consultants really helping to drive. It's not that they've never done this, but I'm seeing more of them tapping in to the mentality of the buyer in a way that maybe a larger corporate entity may have not done. And, you have the Richemont groups and Swatch Group that would come in, and they're not asking anybody anything in the collector space before they open a store, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
They're not concerned at all. It's for them, it's all corporate business. But these smaller ones, they realize this is a big deal. This is expensive. Like, I should ask local people to help me because I could get in way over my head.
Yeah, absolutely. The bigger brands, they know it all. Right. And so they act like they know it all.
They think they know it all.
They act like they know it all. But yeah, you're right. You have these smaller brands that come in and take expert advice. We have a saying that, hey, look, if you're trying to get fit, for example, you're not coming to me. I don't have a six pack. You shouldn't ask me for advice on how to get fit. But if you want to sign a retail lease or commercial lease, that's my expertise. And that's kind of what I advise people do.
Let's talk about some of the watches that you've purchased in terms of unique watches. You represent an interesting mentality. It's not all people, but you have a signature look you like, as well as an interest in buying watches exclusive for you. And there's a lot of men and women around the world like you, but you do not represent the average watch consumer, right? You've taken it to a level where you say, not only do I want to make up my own designs, but also I have a color or a pattern or a theme or a mixture that I like. And you said that for you it's black and red. That's very cool. One time I actually almost wanted to start a brand that was just black and yellow watches. So I get it. But talk a little bit about why it brings you joy to maybe have some bespoke creations made, or what is the appeal of having sort of a signature color palette that you keep returning to?
So on the black and yellow watches, I'm going to send you a picture of something that I haven't released yet, like on my Instagram or anything, but it'll probably be out before this recording. So I'll send that to you. I'll tell you right now, because that way everyone can hear it here first. I just bought this piece unique Vanta Black Yellow Hands Moser, and it's really, really cool. So I'm really excited about that one.
The Vanta Black ones are awesome.
Vanta Black with yellow hands. So they did a piece unique for. They did 4. They did a red hands, yellow hands, blue hands, purple hands.
I remember those, yeah.
And so now I own the red hands and the yellow hands. I'm looking for the blue and purple, so if anyone has those, I'd like to complete the set. But yeah, so that's on black and yellow watches. So my favorite colors are black and red. A lot of people ask me like, why do you do these black and red watches? And it's just my two favorite colors. There's no like rhyme or reason. And it's just become a theme that I like to collect. And I try to keep the ethos of like a company's style, but create it and make it my own, if that makes sense. So I've done ones with Le Sablier where they're very well known for their aventurine. It's a micro brand and they do these incredible aventurine dials. And so for my piece unique, I was like, hey, can we do a black and red, but can I do a black aventurine dial? And they were like, oh yeah, for sure. That would be awesome. And we did a piece unique, with a black aventurine dial and red hands. And it looks really, really cool. And so I try to keep the ethos of a brand. A lot of the times I'm buying on secondary, like the brand did it for, I have two only watches, one from Gerard Perregaux, one from Jacques Dro. And they did them for only watch. So it was their styling and then just in a black and red format that I really loved and I bought for myself.
Do you intentionally look for that? Like being able to do your own watches and say to a brand, I'd like to do this. Do they offer it to you? I'm wondering how this service has been presented in the first place.
So a lot of the times brands, I'll ask, I always ask because it doesn't hurt to ask. Yeah. But sometimes like Christopher Ward just did a 12660 for me. It was the new black DLC case that they have. And it's all black with a black case and black bracelet, and it's really, really thin, and I love the watch. And I was in the showroom and I was like, I really want to buy this watch. It would have been perfect if it had red hands. And I just said the comment, and on Thanksgiving Day Mike Pearson sent me a text and he's like, congrats, this one's for you, and it has red hands. And so sometimes it's just offered, which is really cool. Romain Gauthier did a piece unique for me where we did an event here and they had a great time and said, I really would like to do something special for you. And they did a piece unique for me and we did the forged carbon dial because he does a lot of forged carbon. And so sometimes a lot of brands will offer. Sometimes I'll ask and sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no.
So you yourself kind of bring it up. You'll ask, you'll suggest it, you'll see how far you can get with it.
Yeah, a lot of the time, yes, right? Look, if you don't ask, it's not going to happen, right? So a lot of the times I ask. Sometimes a brand will say, sure, we would love to do that for you. Not yet, which I respect. And I understand and I like that because the door's open and one day, hopefully, we could do something together. Some brands are just like, no, we don't do that.
Now, as a collector, I've noticed that for the most part, those piece unique watches or the highly limited ones tend to not do as well on the aftermarket than the stock ones, mainly because they're just not as well known. Though I've thought that's quite silly. I've always thought that those piece unique ones should actually command a slight premium because they're not like the stock one. But of course, every collector has the same mentality to it. I want you to project your mind a little bit in the future, 10, 15 years from now, maybe a little bit longer, 10 to 20 years from now. What do you think the status of all these piece uniques are? You'll agree that these days, there's tons of them being made for you and a lot of others. And eventually, a lot of them are going to hit the market. And they're not going to have press releases or stories behind them because they are these floating models that were made for, one or a small number of individuals privately. Do you think this is going to be an amazing thing for future collectors to get these? Or will these be a bunch of weird watches without context or stories that just aren't going to be as desired as they could be because there's that lack of information about them?
So I agree with you. Sometimes it baffles me how inexpensive some of these pieces go for. It's the only one in the world. How is it going for that price? That being said, I think a lot of brands are also going to stop production of piece uniques in the future. But today, for me, I never look at the value. When I do a piece unique, that one's never getting sold. It's not. I put my name on half of them. If the brand would let me. On the Christopher Ward belt canto that I'm actually wearing right now, it's a piece unique, and we had my name engraved in Arabic by the same artist that did the Arabic Day, for example. His name is Wissam Shokat, a very famous Arabic artist, calligrapher. And so I have my name and literally posted on it. Same thing with my Constantin Chaikin and my Romain Gauthier. I would never sell those watches. If I pass away and hopefully they go to my kids and hopefully my kids still sell them, but maybe one day they do. and someone will have a watch with my name on it. So yeah, I think that's part of the reason why they might not go for that premium, because they're built for someone specifically.
Well, I remember seeing, it's been a little while, but I used to hang out with some dealers of vintage watches. And not all the time, but oftentimes there would be a piece that maybe it wasn't like a piece unique, but it had like that special engraving, right? Like it's like, love dad, or, whatever the hell it says on the back of the watch or something like that. And maybe it didn't add value, but a lot of people were like fascinated by that. They're like, oh, what's going on here? Who's this for? So it's sort of, I think that's what it's going to be like. It's a little bit more intricate than just sort of like a special message on the back. But the fact that something is special and might even have someone's initials on it, I think for certain collectors, especially in the future, adds like a mystery to it, right? Like this mystique, like, ooh, who was this guy? Why did he, it's like this old idea where people would get their grandfather's watch appraised and want it to be valuable, not because they wanted to sell it, but because they wanted this idea in their mind that their grandfather was this well-to-do individual that owned valuable watches. You know what I mean? I think there's something to that.
Yeah, or he had picked something way ahead of his time and he knew when everyone didn't know or something.
Yeah, something like that. So I imagine like 20 years from now, there'll be all these watches that have like a hint of a story, an engraving, initials, some type of message, and people will like read into it and build that world bigger than it is sometimes.
Yeah. That'll be this is niche, this is super niche post next.
This is ultra niche.
The love dad post. But yeah, it's those collectors that are like really, 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 really into it that would find that stuff fascinating. There is,
so here, and we're basically out of time, but I want to end with my prediction, right? Where this is, I guess, almost a New Year's episode. I don't know what's coming out. We're recording at the end of the year, so let's make predictions. I have a prediction that, again, I don't like to repeat a lot because it scares people, but I think it's true. I think we live right now in an era where you can still make a very amazing watch for not that much money. While prices have been going up, and I think for some good reasons and some very bad reasons, you can still get a pretty decent watch for not a lot of money. Look at the small independents and micro brands and things like that. Think about everything you can get for under $2,000. I believe that the industrial capacity to make a lot of that is going to disappear over the next 20 or 30 years. So what does that mean? 20 or 30 years from now, a decent mechanical watch, just by virtue of there being a lot less industrial capacity, will have to cost more than it does today. Just lower volume, no economy of scale, a basic mechanical watch will be available, but will cost a lot more. That's my theory. But there will be this era from like, we'll just say 1995 to let's say, 2035, right? This 40-year period where there was just insane volume of weirdness. Okay, an uncountable amount of interesting watches that went for all different types of prices that you cannot get in 2040 or 2035 for any amount of money. And that those will be highly collectible. That's my theory, that we are living in a golden age that for the next 100 years, people will obsess. We don't know over what. We cannot guess, but people will obsess over something which is made in today's era in the future, because nothing like that will be available for lack of industrial capacity. That's my belief.
So I'm going to take the link to this podcast, put it in my will, cut out the time frame so that my kids could come back here in 30 years and realize that these watches are worth a lot of money.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. And I'm sorry to throw in another statement here, but I think that individuals such as yourself should be recording a video message that you append to your collection for every single watch you do. I've been talking to, I've had people on the show interview them who have database software, but I firmly believe that there should be an established process where everyone that has a big collection doesn't just have a database of their watches, but adds a video file or a memo from the buyer, just like you said, that explains to someone in the future, this is when I bought it and why. Don't you see that as being super valuable?
That's basically my Instagram page.
That's one way of archiving it.
So
unfortunately, Instagram owns that. You never know. You can't just port that over to an Air.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Again, we're basically almost out of time, but we could talk about this ad nauseum. If you're in the Washington, D.C. area, visit the Christopher Ward space and Jabs, where can you point people's attention? If people interested in you, your clubs, the stores, where should they look?
So on Instagram, Watch Jabs. It's pretty simple. You can follow me there, shoot me a message there. I'll definitely reach back out. And yeah, that's the best place to reach me.
Fantastic. This has been the Superlative Podcast interview with Jabs Totonji. Jabs, thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.